Hello and welcome to For Your Reconsideration, a film podcast in which three film school graduates reassess the maligned, underseen or financially disappointing films from filmmakers far more talented than they are. We assess whether these pictures deserve the less than optimal reception they got on release, and whether they're now worthy of your time, or should remain in the obscure hinterland they currently occupy. My name's Rob, and as always I'm joined by my cinema-loving chums, Simon and James. How are you doing, gents?
Very well, thank you, Robert.
I'm all right. I had a bit of a I'm all right considering my accident this morning. I had a bit of a bad time this morning.
Oh, drama! Please tell us.
So you know when you're like at the train station and the speaker over the tannoy goes, "Mind the gap." Yeah, I didn't mind the gap, and I fell down the gap.
No! I can't believe I trivialised this a second ago. I'm so sorry.
So my left leg is completely bruised. My pride is practically zero because I fell in front of a massive group of people waiting for the train.
Well, I mean, that's a massive rookie error in London, isn't it? Where being able to navigate public transport is seen as just a basic level of skill, isn't it? Really?
It was.
But
very
I always imagined you'd get sucked underneath the train if you didn't mind the gap. Did that not happen?
Well,
mercifully it didn't. I mean, unless this podcast comes to us from beyond the grave.
Yeah. The train was there, and the doors opened, and there was a lady stood in front of me, and she went to step on the train, but then at the last minute she decided to stop on the step of the train. So I was already in mid-step as well, and I had nowhere to go apart from the gap. So that's where I ended up. She didn't even say sorry, but it's fine, whatever.
You should have used her as a plank.
Gangplank. We hope you've all had a good week. We certainly have. As always, we're watching stuff at the same time as reviewing films from yesteryear. What have you guys been watching this week?
Well, for me, outside of the film we'll be discussing this evening, it's been a bit of a film-free week for me. I've been catching up on a lot of TV, so the best thing I've probably watched, I mean, obviously I'm absolutely obsessed with the new Partridge on the BBC. It's absolutely superb. It's one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time.
I've still not seen the latest episode. I need to watch that.
Oh, it's so good. I was watching it on my in the canteen on my day job, and honestly, there's a moment in it that uses some de-aging special effects where I literally thought I was going to have to leave the room. Like, just put my tablet down and just go. I was just grinning like a maniacal idiot. And, you know, like, everyone's just... I could see people looking in my direction. It got incredibly uncomfortable. So, yeah, that's probably that's my favourite thing from this week. But I also finished Russian Doll on Netflix, which is excellent.
Oh, nice. I started watching that, but I got to, like, episode 3. I need to pick that back up.
Yeah, I found that. I'm saying it's excellent, but I probably had the same issues as you, as I struggled with the first couple of episodes. I didn't really like the characters and things, but it really picks up and gets very, very interesting as it progresses.
Cool.
Nice.
I went to the cinema on Monday and watched Captain Marvel, because I love me some generic comic book movies. It was good.
How was it? Was it good?
Yeah, any good?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. There was a lot to really like about it. It took a while to warm to Carol Danvers. She's a bit cocky. But it's really funny how annoyed all like rabid nerdy males are getting over it, because there was a time where Brie Larson jokingly said that she doesn't care about the opinions of old white men on a film about a young black girl, which was A Wrinkle in Time. Which I thought was pretty fair, to be honest, because everyone slated it, and it's like, but if you don't relate to it, then you're not going to obviously like it, and the majority of critics being old white men meant it had a really low review. Maybe it's a film we revisit on this podcast in the future. I don't know.
Well, I'd be game, definitely. At least that way I'll either hear of it or watch it. Most of the time doing this.
Robert Parker, the host of a film podcast, everybody.
Yet again, during one of the intros during the week, all I can think of that's going through my mind is Manuel in Fawlty Towers going, "K?" when you guys talk about what you've watched this week.
If it's not got Steven Seagal in it, no idea.
And as we've learned as well, if it ain't got Van Damme, you ain't going to get very far with me. No, my watching this week has really been dominated by I was asked by my wife to build a set of shelves, and I needed something to watch while I was doing that. And I watched the pilot for James. I can see you blinking and shaking your head. I watched the pilot for the Kevin Bacon TV show, The Following. And it inspired me to actually watch the next 4 episodes. And I actually really enjoyed it.
I've seen that.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah. It's the first. I really enjoyed the first season, and then it sort of suffers from diminishing returns.
Right.
But yeah, no, I was absolutely gripped by that when it was first on the air.
Bacon is box office, man. He really is. I've loved him since Footloose and Tremors.
Oh yeah.
He's brilliant, and he brings to that a role that, it could be phoned in massively, that role, but he doesn't do that. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that.
Cool. Yeah, that's quite good, that show, Rob. It's not bad for you.
It is, yeah. Are you proud of me?
Yes. I thought you were going to say something like you watched a YouTube video of how to put said IKEA set together.
As if the whole scenario wasn't embarrassing.
That's why I was shaking my head. Sorry, I'll have to give you much more credit in future.
So, without further ado, this week's movie, I think, Simon, this was your choice, wasn't it, man?
Yeah, it was. I feel I'm throwing a bit of a curveball today because I'm picking a film. Well, firstly, I was really not expecting to feature on this podcast, really, because I always thought it was held in such high regard. Since the first time I saw it, I thought everyone loved it. I thought it was regarded as a masterpiece. But I'll lead with a log line and then we'll go from there. So IMDb has it as: a disaffected soldier returns to his hometown to get even with the thugs who brutalised his mentally challenged brother years ago. So this is, of course, Shane Meadows' quite superb, in my opinion, Northern Tale of Revenge, Dead Man's Shoes.
I'm going to have to go back to town in a bit, mate, to sort some business out.
I don't want to go, Richard.
You don't have to.
What did you do to him? What did you do? I don't want to get
Sorry, I'm off. See you in a bit, yeah? See you in a bit.
Hey, we'll find you!
It's Anthony's brother, isn't it? It's Anthony's brother.
You know the lads had this ridiculous idea that...
Yeah, it was me.
Making me very nervous, Richard.
Well, you should be.
If I were you, I'd get in that car and I'd get out of here, man. Because I'm gonna hit you all.
You get to me first.
He ain't going away, fellas. He's got to get done.
God will forgive them. He'll forgive them and allow them into heaven. I can't live with that.
And that is the point where I would usually feel like a round of applause should be had, but I can't. We don't want to give away the spoiler alert review for the film so early in the podcast. You said it wasn't really well received at the time. What were the reviews? How was it received?
It's quite a weird one because, the criteria for this is generally based around Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, which is, I'm sure everyone knows by now, is like aggregate websites, what takes scores from mainly America. So I think the reason why the scores are so low, so Metacritic has it at 52, Rotten Tomatoes has it at 56%, and it's mainly because the American, especially critical market, did not take to it at all.
Or get it, I would imagine.
Or get it. It's a bit. I was very surprised to see it have such a low score. Actually,
yeah.
I'm amazed this film qualifies. I've got to be honest. Like, I think when you first said that, we're going to do this, my initial response, well, why are we doing that? That's not a poorly received film at all. Because I think in England, it was very well reviewed and revered. But then when you go online and see what the legacy is from the critical response at the time, it's just, I'm befuddled.
Yeah.
Because it's quite a low budget film and it's not on any streaming sites or anything like that. Like, you do have to own it on DVD or Blu-ray. I'm not even sure if it is on Blu-ray, to be honest.
It is. I managed to get it.
Oh, did you get it on Blu-ray?
It was not the easiest to get hold of, I have to be honest.
But then, as you say, James, in the UK, it was just received very well. It made several sort of greatest of all time lists, like around the time it came out, like in a few years afterwards, particularly in Empire, it made quite a few in there. It made it to 27 in their best British films ever list in 2011. So yeah, it was,
that was a long. Sorry to interrupt, Si, but that was a long time after it came out as well. It wasn't like it was fresh in everyone's mind because it was 04. This wasn't it?
Yes, it was 2004. Made on a proper shoestring budget of about £700,000.
Yeah, so the budget's been a little bit difficult to track down. It's somewhere between 500,000 and 750,000.
Yeah.
And obviously this is a very independent film, so we're not expecting it to do gangbusters at the
box
office. It's designed for festivals and home video, isn't it, essentially?
Which it did well on at festivals as well, didn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It was shortlisted for loads of stuff at festivals, wasn't it?
And it made 500,000 worldwide, from what I've found. So it probably recouped its budget just on cinema, and then it's obviously been pre-sold for TV and DVD in foreign markets. So very profitable film, I think, in the end. Also, Si, as you were saying there, just to sort of reflect the critical reception that it got here in the UK, Paddy Considine won an Empire Award in 2005 for Best Actor, and that year he beat out Daniel Craig for Layer Cake and Simon Pegg for Shaun of the Dead, which were two
massive
much
films,
larger films at the time. So,
and I tend to agree with them.
Oh, I mean, I think Paddy Considine is unbelievable in this film. He's absolutely fantastic.
He's great. I mean, there's, I think across the board, everyone hits their stride right off the bat throughout the whole film, and everyone just puts in an absolute shift. And even it's like actors who aren't necessarily known for being professional actors, and people who are amateur actors or just like low-key stage actors or whatever. I mean, I'd never seen Toby Kebbell in anything before this, and he's an absolute revelation in this. He is unbelievable as his
I think that's this is the I think his performance at what is this, we're 15 years old, this film now, isn't it? His performance is one of the greatest I can remember from the middle of the 2000s. I'm sure people will come back and say, well, you've forgotten this, you've forgotten that, you've forgotten this, but I thought he absolutely inhabited this role, which is not an easy role at all.
No.
And he came in, I read that he came in at a week's notice.
Before that, one day.
One day?
They had someone cast and he dropped out. He was concerned about playing the... because obviously the character Anthony has learning difficulties.
Yeah.
And he was concerned about playing those scenes realistically. So Shane got on the phone to Toby and he just come up on the train. And if you watch the documentary that's actually on the disc, he talks about, he was really worried about when Toby got there that he was going to be like really over the top and, really giving what he describes as a Quasimodo-ish performance.
Yeah.
But he actually came with the character fully formed. And he didn't have to. And he said, if he comes big, I can bring him down to make him more realistic.
Yeah,
but he actually had the character nailed from the.
I mean, it's everything. It's the facial tics, the facial expressions, the way he holds his body, the nervous energy, everything about it. The manner of speech, the patter of speech. I think it's an absolute tour de force. It really is.
He's got amazing. That sort of excited sort of 9-year-old boy sort of quality to him, hasn't he? Like, he's in a man's body, and to look at him, you wouldn't think it was any sort of mental deficiency at all. It's just, it's very slight. He's not like I wouldn't even go so far as to say he's not playing like a Forrest Gump-esque character.
No, he's not at all, is he? No.
He understands to a certain degree, but he's there to be sort of taken advantage of, as we see as the film plays out.
Yeah, I remember watching this at uni and with a bunch of housemates. We watched it, and afterwards we were all like, is that an actor, or did they actually hire someone who was like that? Because it was just so convincing. And as you say, James, it wasn't Forrest Gump, where it's like, not necessarily taking the mick, but it's quite an insensitive portrayal.
There's nothing over the top about it, was it at all?
It just absolutely, he was unbelievable. And that's where I think it's quite emotional, and it gets more emotional as the film goes on, and it all comes from Kebbell and his performance, I think. And if it was a different actor, I'm not sure it would have had as much as an effect, but he's absolutely stunning in it. I can't believe he isn't as big a superstar as he actually is. Like, he gets some big movies now and again, but he's only ever a side character who gets killed off halfway through.
He's had a decent sort of Hollywood career since then, hasn't he? Off the back of this, but for me, it should be more. I mean, he was in that movie, The Veteran,
He was in the King Kong film as well, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
he
was
was
Kong,
excellent in that. Yeah,
He's
he was
sort of
Kong,
got-
wasn't he? And he was
he was,
brilliant
yeah.
in that as his little support role as well.
He's sort of adopted like a latter-day sort of Andy Serkis thing because he's also in one of the Planet of the Apes movies.
He
He
is,
is, isn't
yeah,
he? Yeah,
he's
he
in one of
is.
those,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So he's doing he's sort of moving it because he's such a physically accomplished actor. He can do that motion capture stuff as well. I suppose when Andy Serkis is either also in the film or is not available to do the particular film. But no, I've never seen him be bad in anything.
No,
I've
he's
seen
great.
him in the Joy Division film Control. He's excellent.
Oh, I
in
didn't see that. Was it? Yeah, was that good?
Yeah, very sad.
Who is he in that? Who's he playing that?
He plays the manager of Joy Division.
Oh, who didn't Paddy Considine play him in 24-hour
Party People, yeah. Which is also
Rob
brilliant.
Gretton. Is it Rob Gretton, I think?
Yeah, I think that's the character name, yeah.
Something like that.
Is it worth, in the context of Kebble's performance, is it worth talking about the story and what actually happens? Because I mean, there is a huge twist in this. Or is there a huge twist? I don't know. I never saw it coming, so it absolutely poleaxed me when I first saw it. But I don't know whether to give that away or not. What do you think?
Yeah, I think obviously I think the listener can probably tell from the way we're waxing lyrical already. We're gonna enjoy this film, and we would.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
and we think you should go and watch it. So we are probably going to get into spoilers to have a full discussion regarding the film. So go away, watch the film, and then come back and listen to the rest of the episode.
I love how you're the guy with the reins on this, James.
I always forget about the spoiler warning.
You go and...
I don't think we can really talk about the film without discussing the
I agree
spoilers
with you. That's the problem, especially in the context of Kebble's performance as well.
Yes.
Because the tragic element of his performance comes to its full fruition by the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely devastating. It really, really is. Like what happens to him through what you witness through the course of the flashbacks. With regards to the twist, I think you can see it as a twist, but I don't think Shane Meadows cares whether you figure it out or not.
Yeah.
For me personally, I think it's quite obvious that Anthony's not there. Because no one else acknowledges him in those scenes. When he confronts Sonny or when he's in the working men's club with, what's that character's name? He really gets it, that character.
Herbie.
Herbie,
yeah.
He never. If Anthony was there, I'm pretty sure he would have come up in conversation when Herbie's relaying what's happened.
Yeah, and of course they talk about Anthony's brother, don't they?
Yes.
And well, Anthony was there, wasn't he? But obviously he wasn't. I mean, that was.
So I don't think Shane Meadows is trying to do an M. Night Shyamalan at all. I think the twist's there if you want it, but he's not really interested in that. Something horrible has happened to this poor lad.
Yeah.
And I think what he's trying to set up essentially is, his brother Richard, played by Paddy Considine, has come back. Something has happened to his brother, which we see in black and white flashbacks, where these local low-life drug dealers have sort of taken advantage of him and used him for their own amusement, feeding him drugs and, at one point making a woman have sex with him when he's passed out and unconscious and, just sort of using him for their own amusement. And I think what the film tries to set up by putting those scenes where Richard is talking to what we later find is his deceased brother, it's like, why is his revenge so over the top? His brother is clearly still there. But at the same time, I think you can go, well, obviously his brother isn't there and Richard has really gone off the deep end.
Yeah.
Well, is it like is it like a PTSD type thing as well? Because it's...
That's definitely what I got from it, Si, was that he's gone from one war to another, essentially, hasn't he?
Yeah, because it's made out quite a lot. They do really hammer home that he's...
Ex-military.
Ex-army. Even his coat and stuff like that. Like...
Yeah. Not his bell-bottom jeans, however.
No, not his... Yeah, the proper...
That was the style at the time. I had a pair like that.
Oh, did we? We must have done. Because
everyone had boot-cut jeans back then in the early 2000s.
Yeah. I mean, how big were his boots? Good God.
Terrible in the rain. Just really bad in the rain.
Oh, yeah. It's like walking into your lectures with a couple of wet towels wrapped around your feet. What about let's just stick to the performances for the time being. I mean, like you were saying, it's brilliant across the board. I got the impression that so much of it was improv as well.
Oh, yeah.
The lines.
Yeah, they talk over each other quite a lot, don't they?
Yeah,
which gives that impression it is improvised, the vast majority of it. And it's all, you can tell they're thinking on their feet as well. And I think that's what makes it really chilling. The terror in these guys, it comes across in their voice because they're clearly trying to think of what to say.
Yeah.
And as you would in that, if you were really in that situation, you would be talking over each other. You would be shouting over each other.
Yeah.
And I think like, what's he called? The tall, like lanky guy.
Soz.
He's my favourite of the bad guys, I think. Shane Meadows has that way of making really likeable northern characters, like Woody in This Is England.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's a Shane Meadows things or he just knows how to find them, but just this like dirty mank accented guy. Yeah, he's great at it.
Yeah, across the gamut of the actors, I was looking through everyone's IMDb's and like not much. This is like the premiere thing that most of them have done, isn't it?
Oh yeah. When you search their names, the related searches is all the other actors who were in Dead Man's Shoes.
Yes,
that's amazing. Herbie was in Corrie.
Of course.
That's all I could really find.
Well, his career went up and up and up, didn't it? If he was on Corrie.
He was a tragic character, wasn't he, Herbie? I felt like because his death was probably the most horrible. I thought. I don't even know where to get onto that because that's a whole other bit of the film. But
yeah, so should we talk about the first half an hour and the tone?
Yeah,
of
let's
that
do that,
first
James.
Half an hour,
yeah.
Whereby it's almost comic, isn't it? It's like ridiculous. He's sort of just so Richard comes back and he tracks down this gang, and there's a bit right at the start which is just bone chilling, where he runs into Herbie in the working men's club.
Yeah.
And he's just staring at him. And Herbie comes over, and he's like dealing pills to the locals and what have you. And he comes over and he's just like, "What are you looking at?" And he looks at him so passively with these dead eyes. He's like, "What? And then he goes, "What are you fucking looking at?" And then have you ever been in a pub where it's just about to go off? Right, and you just hear that scrape of chairs.
And the atmosphere is just switched like that.
Yeah, and that was, I think that's one of the best scenes of the film because it just switches like, "No, I'm looking at you, see you next Tuesday."
Yeah. It was that's the first time you've seen him angry in the film as well. So it's absolutely shocking in that sense.
I mean, we're only 5 minutes in at that stage.
Yeah. And you're in, because the setting, I mean, talking about like so much of the opening 5 minutes to 10 minutes is world building into it of where they are and how sort of this is forgotten England. It's totally destitute, isn't it? You sort of get sucked into this club where you think that it's Anthony and Richard having a sit down. I mean, do they even have drinks on the table? I don't know.
No.
They just sat there. They don't have drinks on. See, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
It's probably like pulled in a favour at the local club, and it's like, yeah, not doing anything else. We don't have anyone in, so yeah, by all means, bring your crew.
It is, isn't it? It is definitely like that. Come on in.
And the fact that none of the patrons around them react when he threatens Herbie.
Yeah.
Like, so you get the sense like, oh, it goes off all the time in here.
Yeah.
No one's bothered.
And that's just like what the gang are like, little tiffs and rubbish all the time.
Yeah.
The little fractious moments and a crossword here and there, and they're all suddenly up at arms with each other.
Yeah.
I love that dynamic of that little gang as well.
Yes, I do, yeah. And to be honest with you, they're all, as we find out through the course of the flashbacks, I don't care that any of them get it, to be honest with you. Like, I don't even really care about Herbie. They're all scumbags and they all absolutely deserve it in the context of the film.
Absolutely, yeah. Regardless of remorse or not, because as you see, like, the flashbacks, no one comes off shining in the flashbacks. The only one, however, is the chap that is missed out, isn't he? The bloke at the end. Yeah. But we'll get to him shortly. But,
we'll get to him later on.
Yeah, but that was the only bit I felt like there was any remorse exhibited by anybody. What about music during this opening half an hour?
It's quite sparse, isn't it? I mean, especially during the present day. I guess it would be present day. Yeah, during those bits, there's not anything, is there, in the first half an hour? You only really get music when it's coming from the flashbacks.
Yeah, you get like a sort of a twinkly country travelogue soundtrack.
Oh, the
when it
opening,
starts. Yeah, the opening. But aside from that, you're right. It's very, very sparse.
But that's the thing with Shane Meadows. It's always got all of his films have such a strong sense of place, essentially.
Yeah,
because
that
he always shoots in the Midlands,
Yeah.
and it's essential because even for people who like us who live in England and watch a lot of British films, the Midlands is never on TV. The Midlands is not an area that is shown a lot. More now, probably with Peaky Blinders and things like that. But I don't think any of that's even shot in Birmingham.
But especially not like rural Midlands like this as well.
Yeah, and to set a revenge tale in this part of the world, it really sets up how the suburbs sort of the working class areas encroach on the countryside. And the countryside meets the local town and stuff like that. So yeah,
but I mean, it's very true to life, though. I mean, the three of us, we've all grown up in northern towns, haven't we? And we all can see not similarities, but we can all recognise. I certainly didn't feel. I felt not a kinship. I don't think that's not the word I'm looking for, but I recognise certainly the sense of place that was being put forward here.
Yeah, it's definitely got that Our Town from the Hill vibe, like your
certainly,
like your Full Monties and your Brassed-Offs and things like that. We know where we are, and from the accents as well.
Yeah,
just saying that, like a lot of the problems from the Americans did actually come from the accents. Like a lot of them just didn't. They just couldn't understand what they were saying. So
that doesn't mean a film is bad.
Well, yeah, that's true. But like, just to jump on Letterboxd. So these are the user reviews on Letterboxd, where it's just standos like us three, I guess. This was added by Statics on the 25th of Feb 2019. So watched quite recently, actually.
Recent.
Half the experience is trying to determine what the characters are actually saying.
I mean, it's uniquely depressing here. What did he give the film, Statics?
2 stars. I mean, I'm not sure where the two, if he didn't know what was going on. I mean, but they'd give it 2 stars. Well, which is generous, I guess, if he didn't know what was happening.
If you're an American watching this film, I know people in the UK who can't understand anyone who live down south, who don't understand anyone north of Watford. So I can understand why, if you're American, it might be difficult to sort of get on board with the accents, but I don't find them that hard to decide.
No,
they are speaking English.
I don't think the filmmaking style, the storytelling style here is that actually difficult to follow either. You can follow the story without actually hearing what they're saying, because most of it's improv anyway. So
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, the film shouldn't be panned just because you can't get through an accent.
Yeah. Well, keeping with Letterboxd, there's another one I saw which I thought was quite interesting, really, because I just find it the complete polar opposite, and it's kind of echoing what we're talking about now. So this was by someone called TSM, also give it 2 stars. There were elements for a very good film here. Unfortunately for me, its low budget and improvisational acting kept it from achieving its full potential. But I think the low budget thing is irrelevant because it maximises the money it's got and makes it feel way more than the money's got into it. And then the improvisational thing is what makes the acting so good and what makes it so believable and makes it really chilling and quite terrifying what's happening to these baked twats.
I mean, that sequence is absolutely terrifying.
Well, where he spikes them and they...
Yeah.
So I always thought, I was rewatching this, and I've rewatched it. I rewatched it last year for a thing I was working on. And then I watched it again this week in preparation for the pod. And I was always like, right, well, why? He's been in their houses, he like messes around with them, starts winding them up and starts getting them into a state of paranoia. And I was like, well, why didn't he just kill them then? And then I sort of penny dropped. He's trying to create the same level of fear in them that they created in his brother, basically.
Yeah,
definitely. Because he could have just killed them all. He could have just gone into their house and slit it.
Yeah.
As he says in one of the greatest confrontation scenes.
Oh, well, can we talk about this, please?
We could probably do a full podcast just on this exchange.
I think we could. Firstly, can we just discuss, nod to Gary Stretch. Gary Stretch is brilliant in this. I mean, he looks like a Sicilian mobster plucked out of that. You know, a couple of episodes we were talking about a Hayden Christensen
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
He looks like he's got that aesthetic, hasn't he? He's been plucked out of the Gambino family and placed right
Topical.
Yeah, very topical. It's been placed right in where is it? Matlock, Derbyshire.
It is Derbyshire.
Yes.
It was filmed in Derbyshire, yeah.
But this guy, he's got a stunning middleweight boxing career, and this was one of his first jobs.
Yeah, because he just fancied acting in movies, didn't he? And
Yeah.
but he's very good.
Absolutely, mate.
I don't know whether it was intentional or whether it was him being an amateur actor, but his delivery was so like stifled, and you couldn't really. He mumbled quite a lot, and
Yeah.
But it made him like quite terrifying, as because he's the leader of this mob, isn't he?
I definitely thought he carried threat.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and like you would imagine that he's the alpha male of the group because he is a bit tapped in the head, and he does get that across very well.
He went eight rounds with Chris Eubank, just so we all know. 8 rounds before he got knocked out.
8 rounds. I did notice as well, because to be honest with you, and I'd never looked into, because I haven't seen Gary Stretch in anything since, to be honest, but I know that he's had a career in a lot of straight to DVD sort of action films out in the States and things like that, and tiny parts in bigger productions. But when I actually did a bit of research this week and found that he had a pro boxing career, I was looking at his right eyebrow, and he's got a scar
big
right
scar,
above the top, where he's
yeah.
obviously been split a lot of times when he's been fighting.
Yeah. Some serious
He's got a
scar
real
tissue there,
face.
hasn't he?
He's got like, I could be your mate, or I could knock you out. Like,
Yes, he's got one of them faces, hasn't he? Yeah, definitely.
yeah, and them lot are all scared to death of him.
Yeah.
Which is what makes that confrontation with Richard all the more. And I think it's probably Paddy Considine's finest hour. You know, we're in 50 years' time when they do the in memoriam section at the BAFTAs all.
They've got to show that.
Well, they'd have to bleep a lot of it out. But
Joanna Lumley won't appreciate the.
I feel like though the writing that, because that must have been scripted, that bit, because some of the lines in that are just, they're too good to pluck out off the top of your head. You know, like it's beyond words, mate. That kind of stuff, like that it's chilling. He has lost it. That's the moment where, or the danger. I mean, you know, it's the kind of danger that other actors would give anything to be able to convey, but Considine just breathes it.
Oh yeah,
and I think that's why there was a lot of comparisons to Robert De Niro in Travis Bickle in a lot of the a lot of the reviews. It's just that unhinged. This guy can do anything, and what I love at the end of that confrontation scene, he gives them a chance.
Yeah.
He tells them he's been in their house, he could have killed them all, and if he was them, he'd gather them goonies, he'd get in the car, and he'd fuck off.
and the car.
The car,
little 2CV thing. Last seen in For Your Eyes Only. In a different Two slightly different films, I would have thought.
Yeah. When they first roll up at Sonny's house listening to gangster rap outside in that thing. Like, I'm dying laughing. It was so funny.
Yeah. Well, this is like one of those things though, about this film that I really love was I've always, you know, like we being film geeks growing up, we've always hated bullies and whatever, but like these are the bullies, you know, these are your small town bullies who, when they're actually faced with anything bigger than they are, crumble at the first sign of obstruction. And it's so nice to watch this. These guys who are, every town's got them, every village has got this sort of group, and they all just crumble in such a satisfying, realistic way.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. That was my, like, I didn't actually notice that as much first time round. I've seen it a few times, but I really noticed it this time around, where it's really satisfying seeing all these cowards be like really shell-shocked and terrified just of one man.
Yeah.
He doesn't show any particular skills like Liam Neeson, but it's just typical, isn't it?
Did he have a kosh?
third, we got him in 3 times. Yes, hat trick. But it's just,
I'm going to run that into the ground.
but yeah, as you say, Rob, just typical bullies preying on the vulnerable, and then when the shoe's on the other foot, they just can't cope, and I
love that,
completely cower.
Yeah, they fall to bits, don't they?
Yeah,
it's so nice.
He has the confrontation with Sonny. They go back to Sonny's club and they make the decision that they're going to have to take Richard out because he isn't going away. And they're all shook up. Even Sonny's shook up by that. While Gypsy John goes for a piss. That's his name. That's
Yeah, I
that's
forgot that was his name. You know?
Yeah.
His intro was fantastic, by the way, where they've all got the makeup on.
Yeah.
And someone spray painted knob on the back of his.
He comes out in a chromed out suit like R. Kelly in the Same Girl video with us.
Rob, we stop.
Another hat trick.
Moving swiftly on, carry on.
So yeah, they all think they're all pranking each other, don't they? And he graffitis knobhead on the back of Gypsy John's suit jacket that apparently cost 500 quid but looks about 50 quid from the second-hand shop. Anyway, while they're all deciding that they're going to kill Richard, he decides to axe murder Gypsy John in the toilets of the working man's club. And then they basically go to Motson's farm the next day, which leads to one of the funniest scenes in the entire film, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, when what's his name? Who's the fella who gets? What's his name?
Al,
that's the guy. Yeah. And Al walks to the door, doesn't he, to knock on and try to negotiate with him, and gets in the way of a bullet from Sonny, doesn't he?
Yeah, why has he fired the gun? They're like wrestling each other, and he just go, I've got that.
He hasn't even touched him. He comes walking. So Richard's hiding out in Motson's farm, and he's told Sonny the day before, "You're going to come and see me, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, I am. All right."
Oh, and
but
he does
I'm
that.
gonna...
Ooh,
yeah,
you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like, oh, you're hard. Like...
Yeah, exactly. I love it. I was struggling to do it on, via the medium of sound waves. I was struggling to impart.
You're hard.
Yeah. So basically, Al gets out of the Citroen and goes up to sort of negotiate. He's got a big wad of cash that Sonny's given him, and Sonny's got a rifle.
It's about 120 quid.
I know.
Which is millions in Derbyshire. Millions.
Yeah.
It's Al's gyro for the week. Right? So. You know they're all signing on as well, aren't they?
Well, obviously.
Yeah. So basically, Richard backs him out of Motson's farm, which is this like just disused old farmhouse, and he's got the axe in his hand that he did Gypsy John in with, and Sonny gets him in his scopes, but Al stood right in front of him, and he shoots Al by accident. Right? Blows his head off. Right,
we're laughing.
I know. Yeah, we're laughing about this
because he deserved it anyway.
But it is comical. It is comical.
It's hilarious. Like, and the first thing I thought was, right, you've shot your mate. You're a bit shaken up. Have you only brought one bullet with you? Reload.
Yeah.
Because Richard's just stood there in the middle, like, come on, then.
When he goads them, when he's got the axe in his hand and he just like opens his arms and just goads them, and then they just reverse and get the fuck out of Dodge.
Get the fuck out of Dodge.
Do it today. Yeah. Well, I think like these. I love all these little. They're like a series of little confrontations, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then before long, we're at this this chaos where they're totally disbanded, aren't they? The group of bullies.
Apart from three of them.
Well, yeah. Well, what's the guy? The guy who ends up in a suitcase. What's his name? Because he proper bottles it, and he ends up.
He falls apart after he watches Al get his head blown
That's
off.
it. He starts crying like, "Oh, he killed Al," and then we're laughing because it's a bully getting his comeuppance. That's why we're laughing. But and he ends up like Mr. Potato Headed in a suitcase, doesn't he?
That's one of the ones that I think if they won't go back and look at the film and look at the budgetary constraints that they had, they might change that, because I don't know what that effect is, but it looks absolutely terrible. His name is Tough, and he gets
Tough. That's
basically the implication is that Richard chased him down the country roads, killed him, and then snapped all of his limbs and shoved him into some like carry-on luggage.
Yeah. Well, and considering, like when we see the flashbacks later on to what happens to the little brother Anthony, he was really terrible.
Oh yeah, he was one of the worst.
Really,
like
spitting on his head
yeah.
and all sorts. Because for listeners, I hope you've gone and seen it, and you know what's coming. But the sort of the final bit of the film really reveals that Anthony was taken out to a disused castle, to some stables there, and they abandoned him there, having abused him, and he hangs himself. And Tough is one of the sort of the main instigators of that whole event, and they all leg it and dive in a minivan and minibus and leave him there. And yeah, so it was like I felt a bit a tiny bit shortchanged that I didn't see Tough get what was coming to him.
But then I think the fact that he falls apart so spectacularly and tries to run after the Citroen dies a death as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
And just falls apart. It just shows him up for what a horrible little toad he is, basically.
Yeah, because everyone gets waxed really quickly. So Al's gone, Gypsy John's gone, Tough's off up the road, ready to be suitcased, and so we're left with the three then, aren't we?
Yeah, so it's Sonny, Herbie, and Soz are left, aren't they?
That's the three.
And then because you think they're the main three, so you're like, you know, where's it gonna go? Is it gonna? Because at this point, you've still got about 40 minutes left, half an hour left.
Yeah.
And then he goes into the house. They go home. They look upstairs, don't they? They're terrified, and they all get their weapons. And Soz gets a samurai sword.
Oh, it's so funny.
Herbie gets
the
leave each other's side.
Yeah, Herbie gets a tiny knife.
One of them's having a poo and the other's in the bath, and they're all like, "Oh god, it stinks." You know that it's all absolutely demeaning in the extreme.
Yeah, and then they're all washing up as well later on.
Yeah.
He has a pot noodle.
After you use your pot noodles, why not keep them for your? It's like something out of a Peter Kay routine. Just keep that for your little half pint. Yeah, and go. Oh,
Half a lager, brilliant. Have a pot noodle.
Bit of Bluefoot dance.
Pot noodle. Well, it's another reason why, to love Shane Meadows is he just makes everything so real, and that's one of those instances where they're scared of getting murdered, yet they're still just having casual chat about the best use of recyclable plastics. He just straddles that line between film and documentary so well. And it works well because it's in England as well. You've got all this handheld camera work, and then you've got these three guys, one of them having shit, one of them having a bath. You would expect people in that situation to behave
with a
in that.
poor knife, a tiny little knife.
So while they're doing that, Richard, he puts all the drugs he robbed from them previously in the kettle, knowing that they're about to have some pot noodles because they've got an obscene amount of pot noodles on the shelf.
There's so much instant ramen in this house.
I mean, that is disrespectful to instant ramen. Oh no, pot noodle aren't going to sponsor this podcast, are they?
There are other dried noodles.
For Your Reconsideration, coming to you from Pot Noodle. I'm down with that.
We could got to take what we can get at this stage.
I'm down with anything. Pot Noodle, if you're listening, come on, let's have you. Let's be happy.
Do the right thing.
You also do a great half mug for half a lager, I believe, as well. So marvellous.
As advertised by Soz in the Dark Revenge thriller, Dead Man's Shoes.
Soz is my favourite. He was the one I didn't want to die out of all of them. I really like Soz.
No. Well, he's probably the one that did the least to Anthony, I reckon, Soz.
Yeah.
Everyone else had much work, rap sheet of thing you did against Anthony to make Richard want to off you. Soz probably did the least amount.
Oh, yeah. I was reading that he was supposed to be one of the first to die, but because he was so good on set, they were like, oh shit, we're going to have to change this, and wrote him in for a longer character.
And I get the impression that Shane Meadows' approach is quite, I don't want to say laissez-faire, but he's very loose, and if he discovers something on set, then he sort of runs with it, basically.
Yeah.
And he'll beef people's characters up if they sort of impress him, basically, on the set.
Yeah.
One thing that I think was interesting from watching the documentary on the DVD is how much he actually planned the drug sequence in there. He says himself he doesn't pre-plan what he's going to shoot. He doesn't storyboard. But for this particular sequence where Richard gives them spikes their pot noodles, basically, and lets them have it, it suddenly goes very cinematic in terms of the lights.
It does, yeah. Definitely.
It's very well made sequence, and it's edited so well.
Terrifying.
It is, yeah.
The use of the practical lights as well, everything's really bleached out, proper spotlights on them all, and they're all just losing their minds.
Yeah. Use of angles during that sequence as well.
Oh, you love it, Rob. It's all Dutch angles.
I loved it, man. I did love it. I was thinking about that. But that, everything is, that soft handheld, because of the slow motion element and everything being off kilter. Just slightly just before they do that sequence, you've got a reverse, not like it's like the antithesis of a Rocky training montage, where he's pumping up, Sonny's back and James. He's pumping up on the thing, it's like da da da, we're waiting to be killed. Da, da, da.
Yeah, and then he can't do it. He's like, you got to take it off me. Can't do it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like
he's trying to lift weights when he's smacked off his tits, like.
But he doesn't know he is. I absolutely love it. And you've got like Soz on one side with a doing bicep curls, and the other fella, he's
used to do a lot of this.
Yeah, used to.
It's like, no, you didn't.
It's brilliant. And for me, it was more denigration, more taking the mick out of bullies.
What, the bravado, a male bravado?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they felt like they could, don't worry, we'll have a training montage, everything will be all right.
Yeah. Topless as well, because Sonny's topless throughout this whole bit. Yeah.
Is Sonny a homosexual?
There's a very strong implication of that, I think.
Because obviously in one of the flashbacks he tries to force Anthony to go down on him, and he knocks him out with the prowess of a former middleweight pro boxer.
Looks like he properly punches him. I thought he actually punched him in that scene. I was like, how has that been faked? It looked like he proper sparked out poor Toby Kebbell. And he's like, this guy's a proper boxer.
Yeah, Toby Kebbell probably proper hit me. I get the impression he's that kind of actor. Like, just we're going to do this in one. Just proper deck me. Pull it a little bit, but deck me.
And Toby Kebbell came to at the end of filming 3 weeks later.
We're going to the Edinburgh Film Festival.
Just to touch back on the editing, Rob, what you said, like that sequence, the editing is superb in that bit. But just to roll it back to a review, I think this is a user review from Rotten Tomatoes, actually, from someone called Dirty Cash.
It's going to be good.
He sounds cool.
American. This picture is amateur hour at its worst, which, I mean, surely it should be amateur hour at its best. Anyway, this picture is amateur hour at its worst. From the shoddy editing to the campy screenwriting, if it wasn't completely improvised, hard to tell when no real actors were actually hired. Dead Man's Shoes never aspires to be much more than a low-budget B-movie at best. I think to call the editing shoddy is... Well, it's not true.
And I don't want to interrupt here, Si, but you are actually a professional editor working so this is actually someone who does this day to day speaking right now. So, you're too modest in saying that, but it's also a peer acknowledging a peer in a way, isn't it? You can see the quality of what you're looking at.
Yeah, it's someone who doesn't like a film, that's fine. You're not allowed, you're allowed to not like a film, that's fine. But it's when you're bringing up things what just simply aren't true to make you
don't
feel
know anything about.
Yeah, to give you more credence. So this person saying the shoddy editing.
What's his name again?
Dirty Cash. I don't know if that's his
if you're
Christian
listening,
name.
please send your...
Please contact us on our email.
Please, we'll have you on, mate. We'd love to hear a bit more of this.
This review was from 2010, though, so I don't know. His whereabouts are quite a mystery.
Perhaps we will inspire Dirty Cash to give this film another go.
Well, that's what we're
now that we've totally condescended him.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Anyway. And then obviously, the horrible. I think to the trip sequence is that really abrupt ending when suddenly Richard's there in the living room with them. And it's horrendous, and you know what the man's capable of. And Soz is looking at him and dribbling on himself, and it's all just horrible and dreadful. And he's playing with them just the way that Anthony got played with as well.
Is Soz the worst murder? It's very brutal. Like
I think Herbie is the worst.
Yeah, I'm with you, James. I'm Herbie's because he toys with Herbie properly.
He does,
toys with Herbie.
He does, yeah.
And he keeps getting tough out of the suitcase and going like, do you want to give him a little kiss, Herbie? And he's like squashed and mangled in this thing. And he's like, should I put him away now? Should I put him away?
Talking to him like a child. It's very good.
Yeah.
And that's what I love most about Paddy Considine's performance in this. He proper over-enunciates everything that he says, so he sounds tough, but he talks quite softly a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And like his diction is like spot on, and it's like he's talking to a toddler. Like,
that's amazing. Yeah, I've never thought of it like that, man, but you're absolutely right.
Apart from when he's dealing with Sonny and he's like, fuck off.
How many times, just on that topic, do you think that speech was replicated on the streets of Sheffield and Derby, in the years after this film, like, you'll take your gooners. What do they call it? Goonies.
Goonies.
Hey, Gooners, sorry, Arsenal. Take your goonies in the car and, all this.
I've got you. I've got you here.
Got you here.
That works really well on a podcast.
Yeah,
Rob.
sorry.
I was doing the hand, listeners, I was doing the hand signal. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. Right there. I do it to my kids, when they're misbehaving. Like, I've got you right here.
Yeah, me and my 1-year-old had a tense standoff earlier where some of the lines there. I'm not threatening you, mate. It's beyond words.
Now have your fish fingers. James, you said you had some trivia.
Yes. How many times do you think the word fuck is used in this film?
What's a question? I don't know.
105.
Really?
What do you think, Rob?
I can't remember. 7?
116 times.
What? I can't remember any. It's that realistic, ladies and gentlemen.
It's because it's so softly spoken, it just goes over your head, doesn't it?
116 times.
Oh,
Well, they use it like a comma, don't they, throughout, basically.
I didn't even notice.
Fucking this and fucking that, basically.
Really? Oh, my word. We were about to talk about Herbie's death. I mean, what happens to Herbie?
So Sonny gets dragged into the kitchen, doesn't he? He puts a bag over his head and he shoots him.
Which
again,
is the quickest one, isn't it? Like the leader of this gang, and he gets the quickest.
Yeah, I think he gets off lightly.
Yeah.
to be
He
honest.
does, yeah, he does. Compared to what happens to Herbie and what's his face, yeah, definitely. Soz.
Soz gets like a Van Damme / Seagal type death in terms of he gets his nose punched into his brain, doesn't he?
I did enjoy the Seagal reference there. Yeah,
It's the sort of thing that Gareth Keenan from The Office would enjoy.
Incidentally, Soz looks a lot like Gareth Keenan from The Office.
I would absolutely love to watch this whole film where Considine is replaced by Gareth Keenan. I would give anything to watch that. Soz gets his brain put through his head. Herbie gets, told that he's not going to do anything and get offered a hug. And then he gets a knife between the ribs.
Well, he tells him he'll let him live, won't he, first? If he
it's
tells him the
awful.
information that he wants to know. Because it's at this point that it's revealed that there's one more.
That's it. That's the one, mate. Yeah.
He hasn't been able to track this guy down, and he's clearly not in the gang anymore.
Yeah, because
Yes.
he's been hidden away in the flashbacks at this point, hasn't he? Like,
Yeah,
I think
we've
he's
not
got a
seen
cap
him yet.
on in most of them, so he's quite hidden anyway, so you don't really
Yeah,
notice him.
yeah.
We haven't seen him in present day, so we don't really know he's there.
Yeah.
When all this is happening with where they all get baked and he kills the 3 head guys of the gang, you've still got half an hour left. So you're like, well, where we're going to go from here? And then it becomes quite clear that there is someone else and that he has to track down this last person to get final closure on everything.
And for me, there's a slight problem there, like that we experienced with Speed Racer, where there's a natural crescendo that happens that isn't actually the ending.
Yeah.
And you feel a little bit like, right, I've got to remotivate myself to carry on now a little bit. I mean, obviously the film is economical in both its length and storytelling style, that you don't have to sacrifice too much to keep going along with it. But it's still one of those things like, I feel like it should have ended now.
But is that not why the film is brilliant? Because it plays with your expectations as to...
Totally, yeah.
You think that Sonny should be like the most difficult... If we're taking say the Kill Bill model for a revenge thriller, Bill is the last one to get it. Whereas in this scenario, you would think that Sonny would be the most difficult or put more of a challenge or be harder to get to. But what it actually does is it subverts that. It kills him halfway through the film or 2/3 of the way through the movie.
Yeah.
And then
definitely.
the film becomes something else, in my view.
Spot on.
It becomes from being a simple revenge story where, all these guys deserve to get it. And then we're sort of introduced to Craig, who used to be in this gang and was present for the events that took place, but has clearly turned his life around in the years that have passed.
Yeah. That is a take on this that I've not heard before, James, but you are absolutely spot on.
Because ultimately, you root for Considine while he's hunting these guys down. In terms, he's completely off his rocker. He's completely mentally unhinged. But then he goes after someone who was there, witnessed these horrible things, didn't really do anything bad to Anthony, but was there and could have stopped it, and knows that within himself and feels his own guilt and remorse. And then I think he really sort of just does a bit of a 180 and starts to deconstruct the whole concept of revenge at this stage.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you think of the Craig section, Simon?
I think it's the weakest part of the film, if I'm honest. You know, he kind of, well, it's him reaching the end of his journey. Obviously, it's the end of the film. That's a given. But it is where it all comes to a head in his own head, because he knows that. You know, what's the character called? Is it Mark?
It's Craig, I think. Yeah.
I think Craig's one of the kids. I think he's called Mark. I think he's Mark.
Oh, is
yeah, it's Mark. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
That's it, yeah.
And whose wife is the old Shane Meadows' favourite. She's in everything.
She's in everything.
She basically plays his mum in This Is England, doesn't she? Joe Hartley.
Yeah.
You know, by all accounts, he looks like he's he's left that life behind, and he now is a nice enough dude. He's got a nice, seemingly nice family, and then
a lovely goatee.
I
like. I felt like during this sequence, it was Richard's dealing with his own guilt.
I think so.
I felt like he's given up at this point. And it's sort of, he's gone past redemption. I don't think this was actually a story about redemption. By the time we got to this point, I don't think it's about redemption anymore.
It's about retribution and justice, isn't it?
Yeah.
As he sees it. These guys have gotten away with it.
Yeah, and I think the final act of retribution is himself, because he let his brother down.
Yes.
I think that's the final act of the final person who needs to be brought to account for what happened to Anthony is himself.
Yeah, exactly. Because so basically, he finds Mark. He sort of intimidates his children. He uses his children as intimidatory tactics. Intimidates his wife. Mark
that conversation. Sorry to interrupt. That conversation with his wife is outrageous. Awful.
It's one of the most cringe-inducing.
It is, isn't it? It really is. Yeah.
Give him a knife, did you?
Perfectly.
I was a bit angry, to be honest with you.
It was. I mean, it's lovely played, but like that.
There's one line where he goes, "You're a good mother, aren't you?" Good mother.
Oh, it's weird. It's
like,
weird.
oh God, is he going to cut her head off here?
I think that was the point where. I mean, not the point where he's murdered loads of people in cold blood, but that was the moment where you're like, no, Richard is off his. You know, he is mental as well. Like,
at that point, he's a rabid dog that needs putting down,
and he's not so much. He's not so much a good guy. Like, you're rooting for him in that first 2 acts.
You know why these guys deserve it. You don't know why he's now come after this family. Well, you've got obviously an inkling as to why he's come after this family.
Yeah,
but. At the same time, you know, there's a message, I think, of like people can change and move on from what they used to be.
Yeah, there is, isn't there, actually?
And he suddenly comes from being the protagonist and sort of the hero to, well, you know, like this Mark fella is clearly full of remorse because after Richard's been around the house, he confesses to his wife exactly what happened with Anthony all those years ago.
Yeah.
And she makes him sleep on the couch.
Yeah, she does.
Oh,
she's probably gonna leave it.
Never thought about that.
Yeah, and that was the moment where I wasn't on his side anewhere when he was chatting to the mum, because you're like, you know, he has crossed the. Again, he hasn't crossed the line of murdering, but he's crossed the line when he's been really creepy around the kids and he's got families involved, and ultimately the suggestion is he's gonna also kill this guy who was there, even though he wasn't on the level of those people. So it is quite poetic at the end, I guess. That I think you were spot on, Rob, with what you said in that the last person to complete the vengeance is himself, because I think Sonny touches on it in one of the flashbacks where he says, "Oh, your brother's left you."
He does. He says that. Yeah,
he's totally deserted you, left you to fend for yourself,
and that plants the seed, then, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think he obviously feels guilty of that, and the bit where he's talking to Mark in the little disused church where Anthony did hang himself at the castle. When they're in the castle and he's confronting Mark and he tells him everything, and then he's quite mean about his brother, and you're like, that's really...
there's a line in there that absolutely destroyed me where he goes, I think Mark says something like, he looked up to you and he went, he was a fucking embarrassment to me.
Oh, it's awful,
and he means it. That's like he was like, this, and then when he does that impression of him, and it's so cruel and cutting.
It's horrible, Yeah, and you've spent the whole film building this character up only to make him seem that way later on. And it's interesting to even talk about it like this, actually, because this is the first time I'm really looking at Richard in this way, as negatively as this. But it's absolutely correct.
Yeah, he's driven by guilt as much as he is for
that's right. Yeah,
revenge. Like he left his brother, and he knew that his brother would have been screaming for him towards the end. He loved his brother, but he didn't like him because he wasn't in quote unquote normal, because he was slow. He embarrassed him, and maybe that's why he left. Maybe he found him too difficult to deal with.
Yeah. So I think on this point, I mean, I just want to chuck in another review at this point. I think it's quite relevant. This is actually, because I didn't actually show any examples of the American press not liking it, and there are quite a few, to be honest. But this is from Jessica Reeves from the Chicago Tribune. There's a hint of Shakespeare's goriest tragedies here, sucked dry of any attendant of heart, emotional depth, or compelling human interest, which I just could not disagree with
It's
any
always
more.
subtext, isn't it?
Yeah, like that whole final sequence is all those three things. It's all those three things.
So what we're learning here is this film appears in a lot of ways like criminally misunderstood.
Yeah, I mean, if you just see if you look on the box, it's got a 5-star review from Zoo, who I don't think looked into the subtext. To be honest, based on that publication.
I mean, like, what was it? Si, can you just tell me that it said that it didn't have that last review again? Can you just read it to me again? I cannot get my head around that.
There's a hint of Shakespeare's goriest tragedies, sucked dry of any attendant heart, emotional depth, or compelling human interest.
I mean, I don't want to say someone's opinion is wrong, but that's as wrong as it goes.
But I mean, like, the overwhelming thing from frame one of this film is that my hand is being held and told that a sibling bond is unbreakable.
They're all the home movies
timeless
at the start, isn't it?
Yeah, and
it's the most uplifting part of the film, to be honest.
It is, yeah. But by the end of the film, I mean, I want to ring up my brother and sister and tell them I love them.
Mm.
You can't say to me that film, if it makes me want to do that, is devoid of heart. You can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether it's because we are all northern lads. Like, there's an extra special thing what resonates with us because of the location and what have you. But surely they are sort of core general things what apply to anywhere in the world, not just Derbyshire.
But you could put exactly. You could put this film in Mexico, direct it by I was going to say Guillermo del Toro, but
I'd love to see a Guillermo del Toro revenge film. To be honest.
Exactly. But like, you could do that, and I would be like, the themes are cross-cultural. I don't think that the setting is English, but the themes are cross-cultural.
I mean, it's a story of justice, isn't it? Ultimately, but how ultimately, revenge won't bring Anthony back.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And it's how much, and I think that's why personally I've always been interested in the revenge genre, because ultimately you get the catharsis, but what do you actually achieve?
Yeah.
In terms of exacting
that's
that justice
really
on that.
Point.
And I think,
really good point.
And by the end of it, that Richard is the monster. He's the one who can't continue in the world any longer.
Yes.
Mark has put that life behind him. He doesn't take drugs anymore, I assume, unless he's going out and getting shit-faced in the
spending a lot of time on that couch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's going to be looking for somewhere else to live. I mean, it's so harrowing. So Richard makes Mark stab him because he just says, I don't know what I'm capable of. I could take out your entire family, essentially.
Yeah.
He makes him. And he wants that at that stage. He wants to die. He says he wants to lie with his brother.
Yeah.
And then poor old... I don't want to say poor old Mark. He's out in that abandoned castle in his lounge pants covered in blood.
We've all been in this situation where... But we've all been there when...
I have not been in this specific...
Well, no specific... But we've all been in this...
Rob, what happened?
We've all been in a situation where we've seen something that shouldn't have happened, whether it's like at school or otherwise, where we could have done something and we didn't. I'm sure. I mean, I don't know. I don't mean to cast aspersions, but I just mean day to day at school. You see it all the time at school.
Like one of your friends gets started on or gets in a fight.
And you could have done something and you didn't do anything.
And I think that's where Richard's motivation comes from, is that if he'd been there, he could have stopped this from happening.
Yeah.
And also, Mark is paying the price for the guilt that he's felt that he didn't stop that, or he didn't stay with Anthony.
Yeah.
Afterwards. Yeah. And, I think what Meadows is sort of saying here is that some people deserve to die. I think that's quite clear in the film. The first 5 or 6, whatever it is, they're scumbags. Yeah. And they deserve it. And, within the context of the film, you're with Richard in that instance. But then at some point, there has to be scope for people to change, and rehabilitation and forgiveness. Yeah. And ultimately, revenge doesn't pay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the key message of the whole film, isn't it? Revenge doesn't pay. But the runtime of the film runs at 86 minutes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think the film could have done, and I don't know what the right answer to this is, with a little bit of insight into why the likes of Herbie, Soz, Tuff, Gypsy John were the way they were?
No, I don't think so, because I think we all have come across these types of characters.
Yeah.
Herbie's hat alone sort of says it all. Well, this is a
straightness combination is so early 2000s.
Lovely.
I think I had the jumper equivalent to his hat.
No, but I'd be quite interested, in a sense, to see that. But in the concept of the film, I don't think it works, and I think you're right. I don't think we need to see that.
No.
Before we sort of approach our wrap-up, I've been bursting to talk about the most disgusting sound design moment of any film I've ever watched. And I remembered it the first time I watched it, but it really stood out this time. It was the moment when Herbie gets a knife between his ribs, and when Richard's holding him, and he coughs a couple of times, and then Richard pulls it out, and there's an audible scrape of knife on bone.
God,
it's so. I mean, it's
so grisly.
It is. That's you don't see a thing, you just hear it, and it is the most grisly, graphic thing. I think in this whole film, and there's a few grisly graphic things in this film.
Poor Tuff. Rest in peace, Tuff.
Rest in peace, Potato Head in the suitcase.
And I think before we do wrap up as well, I think it'd be remiss of us not to talk about our own sort of history with this film and where we were when this film came out. So it's made by Warp Films, which are a Sheffield-based production company, and this was their first feature film. And I think us doing filmmaking in Sheffield at university at the time, we were sort of predisposed to liking this film because this was the sort of thing that we would hopefully one day aspire to make, I think.
Yeah. But I think one of the surprising things for me over the last few years and why it sort of tentatively first got on the list for this, not because of critical reception or whatever, it's just that I'm not sure that many people have seen it. No. So
yeah, I agree with you, man.
I was very surprised. I've had, met several people over the years where I've mentioned this film and they're just like, no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
But when we were at uni, everyone had seen it. It may
as well have been Star Wars. Everyone.
Yeah, it was a huge film.
No, seriously,
no, it's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was always going through life thinking that this was this cult film, which, in Britain at least, most people had seen, but it's really not the case at all. So I think that's why this film was initially put on the list for this podcast, but then it was such a bonus and massive surprise that it actually fit the criteria of the Rotten Tomatoes thing.
Yeah, and I think we will do this as the podcast sort of progresses. We'll do our big episodes, around Hard Target and Speed Racer, these big, bigger budget extravaganzas that maybe didn't get the look in, but we'd also like to, take the opportunity to shine the light on these underseen films that we think deserve more credit than they've actually got. And
totally.
I think that's a really important...
Again, I'm still astounded that this film is rotten on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it's
that sort of tells you how these aggregator sites work. And
it does.
While we're not led by that, I think a lot of people are, and a lot of people might not give this film the due that it deserves because it's rated as rotten on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's worth pointing out that the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes was a mighty 91%, which is
wow.
excellent.
That is amazing.
It's not that many though. There's not that many audience reviews.
Oh, right.
Which
So
just,
it's sort of
which
like,
just
yeah.
sort of, that's exactly what we're saying is people haven't seen this film for whatever reason. It's a low budget film. It is a low budget British film, so it's obviously not going to hit the homes of Americans anytime soon unless it's shown late at night or it's on Shudder or something like that. So even access to it is difficult. But having said that, it's definitely good to chat about this film because on the off chance someone's listened to this who haven't seen it, well, I hope they have now because we've just spoilt the shit out of it.
There's not much
Hope
point
they
if
listen
you
to
haven't
James's
watched it,
advice in the opening frames, the opening moments.
But yeah, just before you ask that final question, Rob, just one more review, I think.
Please do.
This is from Chris Cabin on filmcritic.com.
Sorry, Chris Cabin.
Chris Cabin.
As in the wooden house.
The wooden house.
Okay.
The film is a failure, does nothing new or especially radical with the normal revenge flick. Again, missed all the subtext to it, I think.
Is that, I mean, that was his entire review?
Well, I mean, this is just a snapshot of that review. But
sorry. With all that in mind, gents, what do you think? I mean, are we urging people to reconsider this film? I think from the general tone of our discussion, I think we're looking at a fairly unanimous decision, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Well, you shouldn't assume, Rob, because I don't think we should reconsider it. No, of course I do. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think it's fantastic. I don't think it's Shane Meadows' best film. I think This Is England is, which he followed this with, is a stronger film, more coherent, and has more to say, ultimately. But I think he'd come off the back of making Once Upon a Time in the Midlands, which I don't think he felt he'd done his best work on, and this was him really getting back down to his guerrilla filmmaking style and the relationship that he'd then build with Warp Films that would see him through.
Yeah, I think that it's no question this film should be reconsidered, especially for people who haven't seen it, and especially for those people who really slated it across the pond when it came out. I am honestly perplexed by some of those reviews. I just don't see where they're coming from at all. I agree with you, James. I don't think this is Shane Meadows' best film, but it's definitely that film where I do think people within the film community, people who would go to the independent cinema on a Friday to watch these little British films did start to take notice of Shane Meadows before This Is England propelled him into like mainstream UK conscience, I guess. I think it's brilliant. I think across the board it's fantastic.
Yeah, I went into this watching this again after a couple of years this week, thinking that I know I like it, and I liked it again on watching it, and I started seeing things in it that I hadn't seen before with a fresher eye, with years out, and then talking it through with you guys tonight. I actually don't just think it's a good film. I think it's a really good piece of work. So I'm like, definitely reconsider this and go and watch Dead Man's Shoes again. Like we just said, though, it's kind of hard to get hold of. It's not on any streaming services or sites or anything like that. But it is Blu-ray available. Although I believe, James, did you get like that cheeky little documentary on DVD, or was that on Blu-ray?
Yeah, I've had this on DVD for years, basically since it come out, and there's a little documentary on it. It's probably on YouTube if you search it, called Shane's World or something like that, and it's just like a head-to-head sort of conversation with Shane Meadows where he talks about the genesis of the film and how certain elements of it are autobiographical, like they are a lot of his films, and then just the journey from getting the film made to taking it to the Edinburgh Film Festival. And there's a lovely at the Edinburgh Film Festival, you see a very enthusiastic Toby Kebbell with spiky hair of the time in the background, and he looks absolutely delighted to be involved with the film.
Oh,
so
what a
it's
dude.
well
What
worth
a
a watch.
dude.
It's about 20 minutes. It's really good.
Oh, I'd love to find that out because the Blu-ray had nothing.
Did it not?
Nada.
Yeah, no, it's
that's
on the it's on the original DVD, so you can probably pick that up for about £2
I'll check it
from
out.
Amazon.
I'll check it out. So that's the end of another glorious episode. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, we're on Twitter at For Your Reconsideration. Give us a follow. We're also on Letterboxd as Reconsider Pod, where you can check out the star ratings for each of the films we cover and also what's coming up on future episodes. If you want to get in touch with us in a more long-form manner, then drop us an email, reconsiderpod@gmail.com. Keep it friendly though, yeah? Thanks so much for the download. If you enjoyed what you've heard, why not subscribe and give us a 5-star review? It takes no time at all and helps more folks discover us. Thanks for listening and join us next time. Take it easy. Say goodbye, boys.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
At ease. At ease! At ease! What does that mean?